everyone, and welcome. This is Frontier Opening Bell. I am Faith Agbetuya, joining you right now with Agnes Gital, Managing Partner at GBS Africa. Thank you so much for coming on, Agnes. And I have with me economist at Vetiva Capital Management, Ibu Moyeni. It's really great having you join me on the show today. We'll move very quickly now with a look at how the markets closed on Friday across selected African markets. We took a look at about five of them. We had Nigeria, which had the last trading day on Thursday due to the public holiday on Friday to mark the October 1st independence in the country. The market closed on a very positive note. It was a marginally high performance of the market. So that was about 3.23% on Thursday. BRVM recorded 0.49%. Egyptian exchange was the only one that went down, which that was yesterday on the last trading, with recording 0.43%. The Nairobi Securities Exchange reported 1.64%, also on a very positive note. And the Johannesburg Stock Exchange had 0.97%. On a very positive note as well. Moving on now, let's have a look at the headline news in the eastern region of Africa, starting with the news that listed firms oppose Kenya's Capital Market Authority's proposed recovery board. Unilever case transfer of stake to Limuru Tea. The transfer of stake in Limuru Tea to UK's TICO. Kenya's electricity tariff is expected to dip 33% from December of this year. Kenya's Revenue Authority has posted 103.2% of performance rate at 476.6 billion Kenyan shillings. And Tanzania's Revenue Agency collects 5.2 trillion shillings taxes in the first quarter of 2021-2022. Starting with the news about Tanzania Revenue Agency collecting about 5.2 trillion shillings, that already puts up a notion that businesses or private sector in that part of the world were really taxed, and that will really talk on how much this will affect their businesses. Agnes, do you think so?
Thank you very much, Faith. Allow me to comment on some of the stories from East Africa. I'll start with the electricity tariffs supposed to dip by 33% from December. This is following change in the energy policy, with the president only last week immediately cancelling all unconcluded power purchase agreements after there's been such a complaint from consumers about the high prices of energy in the Kenyan market. The move also saw the energy minister moved from his docket to another ministry. This is certainly as a response to presidents responding to citizens' complaint about high prices in energy. Again, positive reports from both Kenya Revenue Authority and the Tanzanian Revenue Authorities beginning early in June, when the East African government posted their budget for the year. It was very clear that revenue collection was going to be key, and we've seen Kenya positive collection by 100.3%. It means the East Africans are heavily taxed, but there has never been a problem in revenue collection in our region. The authorities are very efficient and innovative. The only challenge in the continent is always in managing the revenue that is collected. But it is interesting to see how efficient they have been in collecting. I do hope that efficiency can also be expanded to the management of the taxes. Thank you very much. I'll move to the West African stories. I'll invite Ibukun Omoye, the economist from Vetiva Capital, to comment on some of the leading stories, particularly the one on OPEC non-ministerial meeting today, and also the Nigerian exchange amending listing rules to attract tech unicorns. I think there's a rally with exchanges across the region hunting for IPOs, and it's interesting to see Nigerian exchange also luring these tech companies that have been developing in the region. Also, Mali and World Bank have signed an agreement for $237 million in financing agreement. Chad is going to spend 90% of its oil export rights to repay Glencore's debt, which was incurred in 2014. And then from the Central African Basin, we have BDEAC selected to manage the Congo Basin's Blue Fund. This is a very innovative fund, which is in line with managing climate change crisis in the region. Ibukun, please share with us your insights from the West African headline.
Okay, thank you for having me. So on OPEC's non-OPEC ministerial meeting today, what we've seen as regards the cartel is that production has not been able to keep up with the demand. We look at the global and the oil environment currently, so that oil prices rose to highs of $80 per barrel. So at the end of 2020, many economists forecasted that oil prices will not break the $60 benchmark, but it actually broke through 60, broke to 70, and made the $80 target. And because of that, we saw OPEC deciding to increase production by adding 400,000 barrels per day on a monthly basis. However, despite this boost to output, we see that despite this boost to the quotas, we see that production has not been able to keep up with the rising demand from the easing of restrictions. So what we've seen is that Nigeria, Angola, and some other key oil producers have production challenges. Particularly Nigeria's oil production, excluding condensate, fell to an all-time low of 1.2 million barrels per day in August. And that's actually affected the growth in the oil sector as well as export. So we actually expect the current stance of OPEC towards production cost to continue. We don't actually see any impetus for an aggressive increase in production in order to pin down oil prices. However, you see that although there's pressure from the US and other organizations, other non-oil countries to ensure oil prices at a stable level, because if you have oil prices that are too high, it could actually derail global recovery. So looking on to the Nigerian exchange and many listing rules to attract tech unicorns, we've seen that for the past 3 years, there's been a silence. There have been no IPOs in the Nigerian stock exchange. The one we all know, the one we are all aware of, is the MTN's listing by introduction. That was not an IPO. It was a listing by introduction. So we've not seen companies take up the context to actually list in the Nigerian stock exchange, and that's because that actually reflects the operational challenges which is in the Nigerian environment. Macro space is still there's still a lot of risk in the macro space, and that has actually affected businesses. So we've seen the likes of Jumia and Co take their listing decisions to other foreign exchanges. So we believe this rule is just amending the listing rules just help to attract some of these names. But again, some of these companies, the investments are in dollars, right? And you want to match your capital with that demand. So I just believe the NGX is actually a laudable attempt in order to improve listing on the stock exchange. However, we don't really expect to see much of a reaction unless there are more incentives that are being put in place. One of the issues that was raised is valuation. How do you value a tech company which has digital? The digital market is barely evolving, and you don't really have maybe multiples or something to probably value this company, really for local investors and everything. But I believe with time, analysts will probably find their ways of maybe using comparable comps or other relative valuation metrics to actually value this tech companies.
Thank you very much, Ibukun. I wonder whether the petrol crisis we're experiencing here in the UK, it has anything to do with the production in Nigeria and Angola and other OPEC countries.
I think that can you please come again?
I'm just saying, I wonder whether the petrol crisis we're experiencing in the UK, shortages in the pumps, but also high prices in other markets, the non-oil producing markets, is it because of the production challenges experienced in Nigeria and Angola?
Well, I believe the UK situation is majorly as a result of Brexit, right? As a result of Brexit, that has affected supply chain issues. A lot of the truck drivers right? Probably keeping up with supply were not available, right? So we've seen that there's actually a gap in the UK labor market, and that gap what is currently fueling the fuel price. But of course, you've seen a lot of like UAE, for example. UAE had to successfully bargained for a higher production quota and got it right. But we've seen that Nigeria and some few other countries, majorly the low-income countries, are able to cope with supply. I believe it's majorly due to the Brexit, the fallout of Brexit, and not really. It's not really a fallout of the low oil production in Angola and Nigeria.
Thank you. Moving on to South African markets, and positive news that the United Kingdom is going to remove South Africa from the dreaded red list. So we are all waiting for those news. Kenya was moved to the amber list, I think about 2 weeks ago. This was introduced by the UK government to prevent people from countries have COVID variant, Delta variant, from entering the UK. However, this list has been called, what can I say, racist, because obviously the countries on this list are mostly from Sub-Saharan Africa. At least Nigeria has not been on this list for some reason. The other story from the South African market is the inflation rate in Zimbabwe hitting at 53% at year end. I just wonder how they're going, how the Zimbabweans are going to survive. Also, the National Bank of Angola forecast 27% inflation rate in 2021. I guess it's tough for everybody in the South African market. Moving on to, unless Obikun, you want to comment on any of these stories, particularly on the inflation rates both in Zimbabwe and Angola, or Faye?
Okay. So on inflation, looking at Zimbabwe has seen inflation rise to record levels, and that's because of the poor policy decisions it has made in the past. And actually, base effects are actually seeing a further moderation in inflation. But looking at Angola, specifically for Angola is one oil-producing country that where oil makes up about 1/3 of the economy. And once oil prices crash, it leads to a fatal currency pass-through. And what we've seen is that the Kwanza has been depreciating over the years. However, in recent times, we've seen some appreciation, but it is still not enough to influence a substantial downturn in inflation. So looking at several African countries, we see that Nigeria is one of the very few countries that are seeing inflation decline consistently. But for Angola, the pressures are still there. Pressures from low oil production in Angola, despite the fact that we have high oil prices, and that's actually affecting the foreign exchange inflows. And once foreign exchange inflows are affected, we see higher exchange rates, right? Higher exchange rates, and that has already affected the currency, the inflation, the consumer prices in that country. So we believe the inflation is still reflective of the current situation in Angola. We believe it will probably take some more time before Angola really gets back on its feet. There has to be a lot of substitution. There has to be a lot of investment in that to actually tame down the inflationary pressures in that country.
Thank you, Ibukun. Another interesting story from the South African market is the Cape Town Stock Exchange, the newest in the market, which is going to be competing with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. The Cape Town Stock Exchange is supposedly attracting listing from across the African region, giving them a better rate and better services from the Johannes exchanges. I think, as I said earlier, there's an IPO hunt across the African market. Moving on to a North African market, and the leading story is that Egypt is to get $100 million from France's AfDB for wholesale market. The next story is that the Businessmen Association of Egypt has signed an MOU with Egyptian stock exchanges for new listings. Telkom Egypt back to the global debt market to raise $500 million. And the next story is Assad raises capital list for top million shares. I think that's it from the Northern African markets. Over to you, Faith, to close the Frontier opening bell for us.
Thank you so much, Agnes. It's really nice having you on the show today. Bukun Omoyeni, it's great talking to you on Frontier Open Bells today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching, everyone. I am Faith Agbetuya, and I'll have you again tomorrow. Bye for now.